morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. Monday morning, back in action with Grumpy because it is Monday, even though it's kind of like a 3-day weekend. I might just take today off. And Polish Prince is with us, who has every Monday off. So do you almost get cheated, like feel a little cheated because
Yes,
everybody else gets it off now too?
every single time. It's absolute crap, but here we are, and I can't do anything about it. So
But hey, the international man of mystery, Cersei, is already in here, right? So is that correct?
it
I'm
is.
assuming Google Translate in effect there.
It's Dzień dobry, and it is correct. Dzień
Dzień
dobry to
dobry,
you.
yes. I
Dzień dobry
kind
to
of
you,
actually,
Susie.
you know what? That's not, I didn't realize that was Dzień dobry because I've heard that a lot, like working in Chicago and
Yeah.
actually, you know,
Because you see a D and a Z, and you're like, that doesn't make a J sound. That's weird, but indeed it does.
Lee's with us, Alan, as everybody gathers out on a holiday morning. Yeah, I mean, not a lot going on. You guys had like a huge event yesterday. It was like a black tie event, if you will, with the award right up your alley. I was really expecting, like when I saw everybody on the screen, I was really thinking like you would have like a tuxedo or some shit on in the award ceremony.
I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it, but then I didn't want to come on the show and just really outshine everyone. It's not fair to everyone else when I'm coming in suit and tie, all suited and booted. I needed to give everyone a fair shot. And
to be fair, honestly, it was a pretty low bar. I mean, it is us after all.
It is. And, at the end of the day, Kazi went first most of the time, and he always gave the right answer, as he said. So there was really nothing I could have done, even if I did have a suit on.
I don't even know why everybody else was there. You should just put Kazi up there and give his answers over there. Yeah, so you guys did all the awards and stuff like that. And I think in general, I agree. I honestly thought as I was watching like some of the cases being made actually kind of like changed my idea too. I was like, you know what? That's not a bad shot and stuff like that, especially when it comes to the player of the season and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, wow, it's interesting. So, yeah, good stuff. That was like pretty huge. Probably the most people we've had on screen at the same time. We're able to squeeze 10 people in a great 4-4-2 formation. That was pretty impressive over there. So anything, the thing that you disagree with the most, you would say, like now that you look back at the awards?
I don't know if there's much that I necessarily disagree with, because I think at the time, and I said it during most of the awards, was that I could see a case for every name being mentioned. It wasn't like there were some left field mentions, but it wasn't left field for the sake of being left field.
Like Diaz?
I didn't hate it. I mean, it's sometimes, and sometimes some people just really love a player and they have to give them as many flowers as possible because others are trying to take the flowers away. So, it is what it is. You stand up for the players that you like. So I think all in all, what we came to a consensus to made the most sense. I know Kazi will sit here and yell to the moon about Harvey Elliott not being Young Player of the Season, which I can kind of understand. I didn't even consider Harvey Elliott for Young Player of the Season, and that's because of how much he's featured in the first team. But someone like, for example, like, do you think he would have been considered for your Young Player of the Season? Because is it an age thing or is it an experience thing?
See, I feel the same way. I did not even consider Harvey. I think in my head it was like between like Bradley and Kwanzaa. And then Kwanzaa just basically by the minutes he's played and what he's done kind of like wins it. But yeah, I did not consider Harvey. Same way. It didn't even come to mind. And that's probably his freaking fault for going pro way too early and playing too many games. I think he's been around so long that even though he's so darn young, I don't even see him as that young. Like you know what I mean? Like I think it goes back to what you're talking about in terms of experience, because he's played so many games at the high level. I don't like look at him being like, oh yeah, he's like the best young player. Even though I know what Kazi is saying, if you looked at performance, and I did, a couple of people give him the shout for like player of the season or something
Yep.
like that too. So I mean, you got to figure like somebody like that is. So as he says, young as age. It probably should be like where were you at that? Like since you didn't consider it, I'm assuming you went for the experience too.
I went with Kwanzaa, yeah, and I basically was looking at it as an unknown commodity or unknown prospect here who is overtaking Ibrahima Konate, who is supposed to be Virgil van Dijk's right hand man, supposed to be leading that back line with Virg, and he just pretty much brushed Ibu aside, and then brushed Matip aside to an extent too. But Matip got hurt, obviously. But yeah, so that's why I went with Kwanzaa. If I were to do it again, I would probably go Harvey Elliott, considering everything that we talked about and the fact that he is still a young player. But I think in my head, when I was thinking young player, I was thinking of almost, if you will, like a rookie of the year, right? Where this is the
Yeah.
first true year, and that's kind of how I.
Is that why we Americanized that concept a little bit, almost, right?
Probably.
Even though, like we saw Kwanzaa before, but not this much, obviously. The thing with Elliott is what's going to be interesting is Elliott has to be one of the guys. Like, I mean, I'm sure all the players love Klopp, but like when they think of their future, I can see a couple of players saying, "Okay, good, maybe like the new system will fits me a lot better and like my playing style a lot better." Whereas probably Elliott is like, God dang it, like this was dead on. I finally got it down. And, he was playing that position to perfection in some ways. So he might be probably the most disappointed, right? Because you had it down. Whereas, the position as it's being played right now, or as Klopp wants it played and stuff like that, might kind of be gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows now, to your point, what those puzzles or what those pieces are going to look like for this next puzzle. And I think we're all hoping that there's going to be a spot for him, but it's going to get pretty congested in there, depending on where he needs to play. Because you could argue that he's going to play in the same spots where Sobo would play, and if Schlatt likes Sobo more than Harvey, and if Sobo has a little bit of a renaissance this summer, then it's hard to necessarily find that spot. Because we've tried Harvey on the right wing. I think that was a shout, that we had for a while, thinking, well, if Mo goes, then potentially we could have Harvey occupy that space. The experiment didn't really work out so much, right? So, yeah, it'll be really interesting. I think emotionally, as someone who plays for the club and plays for the badge, and you see what he does week in and week out for the club, it would be tough not to see him have regular minutes. But tactically, I just don't know, man. I don't know. He's in a really weird spot where it's almost Trent-like, where we're not quite sure where the best spot for him is right now.
Yeah, because like this current spot seems to be the best, because I don't think he's fast enough to be a winger. I don't know if he's strong enough to be more centralized. So this kind of like fits him perfectly. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, here's the thing, similar to what we say with Trent, if you're Slot and you're looking at this team and you're like, hey, I mean, you look at performances and you're like, I got to find a spot for this kid. Like, like this kid does this very well and he's a young player, got to find a spot for him. And, if you have only certain players that are guaranteed to be here next year, I would think obviously Harvey is one of them. And I personally think Trent is moving forward as one of them. So those are players probably he's thinking of trying to create a system where they fit, because I mean they are the future. Like I say, like Elliott has been around forever, but he's still like 21, right? So it's kind of like a huge ordeal. By the way, that was my pick for, you mentioned Soboslai, and I think that's my pick for the player to watch for next season, because I think that's another area where Soboslai, we've seen him, and honestly, like when we were watching him early in the season, there are two players this year where every time I saw him, especially early in the season, I was like, man, this is going to be special. But and then obviously like Soboslai dropped off. But every time they got the ball, the way they moved, the things they did, were like, man, this is going to be special. McAllister continued with that, and I liked Mac. I mean, it was a joy to watch. It's probably, I kept saying it throughout the season, it's everything that I kind of wanted and expected, you know, Thiago to be this season in terms of what he does on the pitch. But I feel like Soboslai is a guy that you try to find a spot that suits him the best to get the most out of him, just purely out of potential.
Yeah, and it goes back to, because we've talked about his role within this club is so different from any club that he's had. Oh, we're talking to ourselves through the chat.
We're talking to ourselves. Yes,
it's pretty amazing. I want to say, I don't think there was, I wasn't assuming that Slot would pick Sobo over Harvey. I was saying that Sobo could win the spot back over Harvey, depending on how Slot feels about him, if he has that renaissance. But yeah, we've talked about how Soboslai has. I knew it was Gally.
I knew it was Gally. I saw the good morning gentleman. I saw the gentleman, and I was like, nobody else calls us gentlemen, so it has to be Gally.
Yeah, we've talked about how his role throughout his career has been very different to what he had here. He's needed to be the main cog. He's needed to be the guy that has the ball at his feet all the time and make everything work all the time. Whereas here at this club, he didn't need to do that, but it felt like he needed to continue trying to play like he always has, to play him out of the slumps that he had, which only made it worse. Because when he plays for Hungary, when he played for Leipzig, like he was the guy. He was the main main player with the ball at his feet at all times, making the passes, looking for the right runs. And here it wasn't the same. So I think, to your point about, because I picked Soboslai to be my player to watch for next year as well, because I think if he's in the right position, it could be great. But again, it could take some tweaking.
Yeah, the only concern I have is, and I don't know if that's like a comfort thing, I don't know what it is, it would be better when he plays with everybody on the squad. Well, obviously not everybody's going to be back, but you know, like most of the players on the squad, when he's like a lot more used to it. There are a lot of times, you were actually mentioning this, I don't know if it was in the award show or last week's Monday morning show, that there were so many times where, you know, we were on a counter with like, you know, like 3-on-3 or 3-on-2 and stuff like that, and the guy in the center would just at the end crank a shot instead of using the width or anything like that, and we wasted a lot of counters this year. And I hate to say it, whenever I picture it, the guy coming down the middle is Soboslai in those situations. And I know it's just a matter of being used to the people around you, because I mean, you do get a sense. I know these guys practice on everything too, but as you play more with somebody, you do get a sense, aside from seeing it over and over and over again in practice, you get a sense of who's going to move where and what the tendencies are. Not only that, where people want the ball. I think it was the very last game there was a counter, and that was the first time, which, you know, mind you, Mo screwed it up, but I thought that was the first time he played the ball in a way that suits the player that the ball is approaching. Because some people want it, you know, do they want it on their left? Do they want it in front of them? Do they want it some like on the back shoulder and stuff like that? So I think because you see the skill and the potential, I feel like that stuff will happen, but that could be like being optimistic as well. Gally says, now as Gally, I think he's a great player, but I don't think people are taking into account that this management team didn't buy that player or that type of player when they were in place previously. That is a good point. But at the same time, with the new system, would they have bought the same players, knowing the system is going to slightly change?
I don't know. That's a good
like
question.
I mean, we don't even know what the system is going to be. This is so tough.
Right.
We were looking like literally before we went on air, we were talking about Gally for like tonight's podcast, you know, some of the topics we would talk about and stuff. And honestly, like, it's so hard to talk about needs aside from maybe like the obvious, like center back. Like, we've got to stuff your formation. You're going to need a center back, right? Like, I can understand those, but we do not know, like, do we need the right back? Or because if Trent is still a right back, no, we don't, because you have Bradley as well. Do we need we don't know what we need because we don't know exactly how we're going to play. I guess my thing is when I look at the squad as a guy coming in, if I'm slots, I look at the squad, I look at the future. I mean, look at the ages of the players, and I say Trent, Harvey, Mac, Soboslai, I gotta come up with something that gets the most out of these guys. I'm not saying like Ando, I gotta get the most out of him, probably more because of age. So I almost feel like, I guess let me ask you that. Do you think it's a system and he's like that guy doesn't fit, or is it he makes a system that kind of gets the most out of the most valuable assets he has?
Probably a little bit of both, because having those conversations about coming in and being the manager of this team, you, like you said before, there's no way that he has been living in his days at Feyenoord not understanding what players Liverpool already has, right? Like we've talked about how these last couple of weeks have been an audition for next year or whatever the case might be, but there's no chance that Schlatt doesn't already know who these players are and how old they are and what he has to work with. So I'm sure there's a little bit of it that he's already coming in with this idea of what he wants to do. I think the other part of it is just going to be taking the guys onto the training fields and seeing if they can do what he's looking for them to do in a specific idea. So he might have this idea of having a specific formation with these guys in mind. And if it works out that way, I think he just moves forward with it. But I think we know that he is open to changing formations more than Klopp was. I think because that's been something that's been discussed, that he's just a bit more versatile when it comes to doing different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. And the first few weeks of June, I think, are going to be pretty telling. When we've talked about the Euros going on, the Olympics, all this. So a lot of business might happen early on. So you kind of get a feel for what the club look is going to be. And I think we'll get a pretty good answer after the first couple weeks.
I'm hoping. I mean, I thought last season's, preseason was going to be the most interesting because we had like a brand new midfield and see how pieces fit and stuff like that. Yeah, this summer just kind of like blows it out of the water because we don't know what the hell we're going to play. Last year, I was more like, how is this new midfield going to mesh in the system and stuff like that? Now we don't even know what the hell the system is. So Ryan says he was in Chicago this weekend and thought about getting a hold of us, guy. Mind you, as Mateusz says, we somehow live a couple of hours away. But some crazy weather over here too, like really good, really bad, like kind of like on and off. I don't know if you did anything outside, but it's been a curveball every freaking hour on the hour.
There was a random tornado plopped down yesterday at like 7 p.m.
We do live a couple of hours away, apparently, because I didn't get anything over.
Yeah, I know we do. That's why I say that. You joke about it.
It's 45 minutes, for God's sakes. Mind you, I did not realize Gordo. So Gordo is definitely a couple of hours away from you, by the way, because might go visit Gordo and his duck butcherings the next weekend. And I was looking it up. He's like another 45 minutes southwest of me. Drove through a crazy storm on our way home. I don't know if he drove through the south side or he's talking about weather there. So that could be either or. I'm sorry for the south side, but it is what it is. He played both 4-2-3-1 and 4-3-3 in the past 2 years. I think it'll be a combination, especially stuff. And that's the thing I like, because he can kind of say, you know what, this one fits the squad better and stuff like that. But I guess, okay, let me ask you this. When you come in as Slot to put your stamp on, do you make a significant change?
I don't think so. I think Gally made a really good point yesterday. And
see, I always miss it. Like whenever he makes a good point, it's very rare, and you end up missing it.
It's once a month, but when it happens, God damn it, you better be there. No, of course, Gally makes a lot of good points, especially on Thursdays. That's why he finishes so much higher ahead of me. But
that was going such a wrong way. Okay. My mind went all over the place. Go ahead, like who finishes when or whatever. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm the child here. Okay.
I never said you're. No, my immaturity is well known, way above the scales. But
Gally said something. One of the questions that we had yesterday is, what is the first thing that we think Schlatt should do? And Galley's answer was to the tune of, Schlott should come in and be himself. He shouldn't come in and do something for the sake of it not being Klopp. He should do everything so that he is comfortable with who he is and what he wants to do with the club, and not do it because the person before you did it a certain way. So I don't think doing something that is totally radical from what we just saw would necessarily be a good idea, because I feel it would be too far removed. But I wouldn't be shocked if there were some things that looked a lot different because he's putting his own stamp on it.
I do get that. He's not going to. I think a couple of people were talking yesterday about not trying to be Klopp, and just trying to be himself and stuff like that. I actually liked what Kazi was talking about the most, even though that'll be the most underappreciated if he fixes the defense and stops goals leaking in, which he has done in the clubs he has been in the past. He does play pretty solid defensively, but I don't know. In some ways, I feel like there will be one, like the first time they go out there and line up, I feel like there's going to be a few things that we're like, what? And, that's going to be the Slott's impact. Because you would think, I don't know, we're kind of like used to it, right? I mean, we've been watching the system for what, 8-9 years. Especially the last 4 or 5 years. It's one thing to watch it early on where we're like, oh my God, this is not working. But as it's worked and stuff like that, and as it's improved, we watch the system and where we can say, we trying to just tweak it because we're so freaking used to it. Aside from Saidu, who wants to get rid of this midfield. But I feel like, an outsider, especially who has their own systems and like concepts established, might look at this and say, yeah, this is all wrong. It's not, that's not how any of this works, kind of a deal, and say, when you have the squad, why would you play this and why would you not play this? That's why I feel like the first couple of preseasons we go out there, I think they're going to be like some, what the hell? Never thought of that kind of moves.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing with this preseason specifically is because we have those major international competitions that we were going to have that regardless, because some players are just not going to be there. So you're going to have to sort of live with the fact that we weren't going to see it. So we might not really have that moment until, early August, where they have the last preseason tune-up before the actual start of the season, where we get a true idea of what the Schlott effect actually will look like on the pitch.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's shades of excitement and shades of nervousness, but I think it's gonna be fun.
You just fucking spoiled the first couple of preseasons for me. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Because I mean that's a good point. Because there's gonna be a lot of things that, well, this is all we can do right now until this guy is in like game shape.
I mean, I'm going to see these guys in South Carolina. I might have paid a bunch of money to see a bunch of kids as well.
That's right.
So part of it is just me trying to be comfortable with the fact knowing I spent a bunch of money to watch a very meaningless preseason game that might not include like 7 of our starting 11.
And not to mention, while everybody was talking about going to Philadelphia in the Discord channel, you were like, you know what? I'm going to South Carolina.
Hey, you can put the blame on the wife on that one.
Really? I mean, to be fair, if we had not gone to like Charleston, literally 2 years ago, I think we went there with Angie. That would be the destination that we picked too, because it feels a bit more unique and stuff like that. But since we checked that off the bucket list and Philly is still there, we were like, oh, we'll do Philly. Mind you, I never got tickets for the game because I thought, I'm not paying that. I don't have Mateusz money. You know what I mean? We're not all Polish princes running around here. So I was like, but if anything, we'll go to Philly at the same time. So we'll get to hang out with the crew if people are there, and then we'll just do the city and maybe hang out with some Liverpool people at the same time. But yeah, the game just felt bad. Edwards didn't recruit someone to make revolutionary changes, steer the ship, captain to captain turnover, says Brian.
I feel like if it was captain to captain turnover, we would have seen a different type of manager come in. We would have seen
like
a Mourinho type, not Mourinho specifically, but a Mourinho type. Where
what do you mean by type? Douchey Portuguese?
You just like called out half of Portugal. Where you have that manager that comes in for a year or two that just works with what you have and does the best job with that team that he can, and then he leaves, and then the next person comes in. There's no long-term plan there. There's just a, hey, we just need you until the right candidate comes back up kind of thing, and then you can go. And sometimes it doesn't work out because it fractures the club more than you want it to. But I think if you were looking for more of a captain, it would have been someone like that rather than someone who you're planning and investing a long-term future with.
Yeah, Galley says captain to captain would have been hiring Pep. That's a good point. That's 2 in 2 days, so I think we're pretty much screwed for the rest of the year. But no, that's a good point because I think that would be the easiest, right? I don't know if the only thing with that is I don't know if Pep and the rest of the squad wanted to be there and stay there after Klopp left. Maybe one, knowing that Klopp was the driving force there for one, and two, probably like loyalties and stuff like that. But if you're gonna do your own thing, maybe then I'll do my own thing too, kind of a deal. And they just didn't trust Linders, I think, at the end as well. Like they did not want to, maybe they didn't want to change and did not want to captain the captain. Style-wise, yes. I mean, but here's the thing. I think you were going to get somebody like that. And Edwards, I can see why Edwards maybe was like, man, we should probably be doing this. We have the players to do this kind of a deal. And maybe that's what the disagreement was at the time. And Klopp being very, rigid in how he wanted to play and stuff like that. So there were obviously some things they were not aligning with. So when they come in, they bring a new guy in. One would assume the new guy fits more with or sets certain things or agrees with certain things that fits the way Edwards looks at the squad.
Yeah, and have that be a good portion of it, and also have him be a guy that isn't totally against what was built here before and using some of that to go forward. Because you don't want to also have someone come in and completely rip everything apart. Yes, agreeing with Edwards is one thing, but then the other thing is making sure that you don't come in and just completely start from scratch, if you will. So, because the foundation is there. We've talked about how this club has been left in a great spot now, and not like it was before. And there's a good chance to continue actually being able to fight for trophies every single year without needing to do too much change. It's just a matter of making sure that you find the right pieces that will fit this whatever system it is that ends up being the case.
I don't know if I ever asked you this, but are you like, where are you at, or how do you like the fact that he is coming in as a coach and he's just focused on, obviously there had to be have been talks in terms of what they're going to with the squad, or more like it's probably like Edwards saying, by the way, here's what I'm planning. Are you going to be cool with this kind of an ordeal? I assume. And maybe like talk about some players they might bring in, and if it fits, like if it's in Edwards' shopping list or something like that. But are you okay with that, as opposed to bringing in somebody who was going to maybe, because of their experience or stature, maybe dictates more power or authority?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with it. I think, when within a system, and we see this whether it's at a club or it's at our everyday jobs, you have people that work, that have their strengths and their weaknesses. And if you want to get the most out of those strengths and weaknesses, or the most out of the strengths, at least out of the weaknesses, you put pieces in place that allow that to happen. And if your strength, if you're Edwards, and if you're FSG, really in this sense, is the way that you conduct business, is the analytical side of things, is the way that you use your money, then you make sure that the people who are in charge of that are the ones who are taking care of that. You know that you are not the strength on the field. So you bring in the person whose strength is on the field and not necessarily is in the back day-to-day transfer stuff. So obviously, people saying that Schlatt isn't even going to have a say on any transfers, that's not true. He's going to have some sort of an input. It might be like, hey, pick 3 guys or there would be a list of 3 guys and go, which one are you most comfortable with? And we'll try there first. And if not, we're okay with choice number 2, whatever the case might be. That way, it gives them some options. But at the end of the day, it's not, he doesn't have the last say in any of it. So I do like it because I think it offers a lot more flexibility within how you conduct the club. And maybe to an extent, I know that you have to connect emotionally with the players, but maybe sometimes it helps not being too invested because then it makes it difficult to part with them. We kind of saw in the likes of Milner and Hendo with Klopp of how much he wanted them to stay and do their contracts and whatnot. And yes, I'm sure part of that was the locker room because I think we could maybe see towards the end of the season that there was something like that was needed. So maybe there was some sort of merit to keeping them around. But at the same time, you have to be cold at times to run a business a proper way. If you had all the money in the world, if you had like $115 billion
Prince money, for example,
you could do whatever you want. But in this case, with the way they're run, you have to make those decisions. And if you cut yourself off from that a little bit, it might make it easier to sit with that. Obviously, it might not be easy at all, but that's just my take.
Yeah, I mean, Gala says he'll get a say on the list, but not on the price of negotiations. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, so you can say, yeah, I'd rather have this dude, but then if it doesn't happen, you're like, well, I guess it's not happening then. That's fine. I would have preferred it, but whatever. I mean, I think in the short term, it's the ideal, right? Because if you bring in a new manager and you give him way too much authority and you made the wrong choice in that manager, it can set the club back 5, 6, 7 years because they can do some stupid business, number one. And 2, I mean, I always talk about this. It's a lot easier for a manager to do some short-term moves without looking at the big picture to save their own ass, to save their own career and stuff like that, or hope that it's going to save. They're like, if I get this guy, I know he's 41, but he could save the season on my job kind of a deal. Whereas you're not going to get that. But having said that, it's almost like, when you, I know in the real world too, like when you're in business, initially, when you go up in ranks, you just getting the more responsibility and you might not necessarily have a lot of say of the people around you. But as you get more established, now you get to say who you want to work with. And I would think in 2, 3 years' time, if the slot era is going really well, similar to the Klopp era, it will come a point where slots will want more and more say, which I think is what happened with Klopp. And I mean, I feel that's natural. It's not a matter of like the ego and stuff like that. It's as you get more and more established, you're like, I'm settled in now, so I'm ready to make those calls as well. And I think that's when it becomes an issue. If it's successful and the guy on the bottom wants more power and the guy on top does not want to really distribute it. But that is not such a bad thing because that usually means things are going really well, that the guy on the bottom is getting cockier.
Right. And I think to your point exactly that the Klopp era didn't start out like that. So, we have this in place now. And I guess when we do the show in 2027, we can look back at this episode and see what happened and what path Schlatt ended up going down on.
Speaking of looking back at things, I've been dreading this, but we teased it last week, so we'll have that. Sorsi says coaches have to earn the trust, and yes, I think that's part of the deal. I do not want somebody getting all the power from the get-go and really blow things up, and then they're fired. But now what? We're screwed for 5, 6 years, kind of thing. Okay, let's do this. I'm almost ready to look at the predictions.
That was a really good transition. So in our Discord channel, and for anyone who is not on it yet, feel free to come on in because we're going to be doing this again this year. We've got a little channel where we do predictions every year. And so in the spirit of review and looking over things, we decided to bring up our predictions from.
Let me rephrase that. You decided.
We decided as a collective, as a team, that we wanted to bring this up. So we have a few of our some of our contributors, and let's see. So we've got myself, we've got John, Kazi, Bickler, Alan, Fish, Galley, and Mr. Timuchin over here with our predictions. Now, for the most part, I think people did did fairly okay, especially on the top four. I think most people got at least three right, if not all four. There was, who was it? Let's see. Fishkin had City, Arsenal, Liverpool. So he had that correct. Galley had City, Arsenal, Liverpool. That was correct. Bickler didn't have Liverpool in the top four, so give him shit for that tonight, but that's fine. But yeah,
that's just Bickler being the ultimate pessimist.
Galley says he was doing so well until that manager of the year. Yes, Vincent Company. Actually, but you could argue that he did win because now he's at Bayern. So maybe
only Galley and Bayern saw something in Company that nobody else does.
Oh, it was too funny. And I think I'm remembering back to I wasn't able to watch the Friday show live, so I watched it later that night. And to Company's credit and to Anand's forgetfulness, Company did win a title as a manager at Anderlecht. So it's not like he hasn't had success. Obviously, the Belgian league's much different, but he's had success there as a manager winning titles. But let's see. Any thoughts here, Mr. Turkish Stallion?
I noticed that a lot of us, I think those were the easy picks, right? Kazi didn't put Arsenal in there. I put specifically that I was going Homer, but looks like a lot of people kind of really thought United would be a lot better than they were. I see it I see United in a lot of top four. Heck, you had him as seconds. And a lot of people had him.
Yeah.
I had gone with Chelsea. I was thinking, and honestly, another month or two, they would have gotten a lot closer. I really think Pochettino had him going in the right direction towards the end. Just took a lot longer than I thought it would take him to kind of find the right way over there. But yeah, that's interesting that a lot of people thought United would do a lot better, and obviously they did not.
And then looking also, because Kazi also thought Company would be manager of the year and Burnley would finish in the top 10. That obviously didn't happen. But there were a few De Zerbi's. One De Zerbi, two De Zerbi, three De Zerbi for four De Zerbi for manager of the year. That didn't work out as well. That was interesting. Just a shameless celebration on my end. I had Cole Palmer as my best signing of the year, and I think that was. I think you can put him in that top three category for sure for the year.
Yeah, that is funny, by the way. Galley had Tonali as the biggest flop. That's pretty good stuff. That's good foreshadowing right there.
We've got to look into it for insider trading at this point.
Yeah, we had to, right? He probably had a bet that Tonali would bet, and then some vicious cycle over there. So just as I thought Newcastle would be up there with Liverpool, City, and Arsenal, I understand they might have been if they didn't have the injuries and stuff like that. Yeah. But the Brighton is a weird deal. And I feel the overall, the Europe effects can really bring a team down, especially if they're not used to it. And I think that's kind of what happened to Brighton. I don't know if they were not deep enough to handle that. We kind of overmined it. And I think, playing every 3 days, 4 days. And we're like, what is the difference does a morning game make and stuff like that? But you can see when something like this happens where a team just falls off the moment they hit Europe and stuff like that, or sometimes the season after, it has to have had a huge impact. But yeah, the Zerbi I thought was going to be, they were going to be able to handle that, and apparently not. Best signing.
So there was Cole Palmer, there was Declan Rice, Justin Kluivert or Szoboszlai. Those two, Kluivert wasn't terrible, but obviously we've talked about Szoboszlai. Bickler had Gvardiol. I think that's a pretty nice shout. There was also Nico Jackson, who was not.
Was Kazi way off on everything, or is it just me?
Well, he had
best signing, biggest flop, manager of the year Company, first to be fired, Moyes.
To be fair, I feel like Moyes is always on the brink of getting fired. It just never actually happens. So I can see why he put him in there. Yeah, at least he had Luton and Sheffield going down. So that's something.
I think you got that one right with Cole Palmer, though. If you do it almost like look at MVP, right? You
Oh,
take,
Cersei's gonna love that.
yeah, I know.
We go from rookie to MVP. This is gonna be great. We've really Americanized it now.
All-Star game coming right up. But yeah,
Thank you,
I
Todd
feel
Bowley.
like Cole Palmer, you take Palmer out of Chelsea. I mean, not that they had a great season, but they are maybe not probably in the top 10. Whereas, like Gally was talking about, like Havertz or Rice, I feel like you can take one of those guys out and Arsenal is still in the top 4.
I think you could take Havertz out, and they'll probably still be top 4. I think Rice did have a really good season as part of the spine because Partey wasn't healthy all year. So, and they didn't have Shaka, right? So they needed someone as their 6, and Rice he's one of the best DMs in the world. So I think I don't think they could have done it without Rice, but I think they could have done it without Havertz because some of Havertz's goals, I think half of his goal involvements came when they were already up like 3-4-0 anyway.
Yeah.
So some of his stats are a bit inflated because of that, but I think they could have very well done it without Havertz.
Yeah, we were looking at it like before we went on air, and it was kind of like shocking that Havertz did not do jack in the Champions League. I think he had like only one of his goals came in the Champions League, and he played like 10 pretty much full games. Yeah, like an 830 minutes or something like that. But I think Palmer, even if we bring Buzz in here, he probably will admit that Palmer was the signing of the year, and that says a lot by his side. Relegated sides, I think there's a lot of wishful thinking with Everton. That did not at the end happen.
Yeah. I guess Wolves got a few. Everton had a few. Bournemouth had a few. So between those, I mean, that was pretty much, yeah, we not a lot of us had faith in the promoted sides besides Gally and Kazi thinking Burnley were going to make it to the Conference League, apparently.
I mean, that's the weird thing, right? I mean, Bournemouth looks like everybody, like a lot of people thought would not do well. I mean, he has him first to be fired, Gally over there. I have him in relegation. Gally has him in relegation and stuff like that. And we thought they would, because I think it was more of a case of like they're due. They keep fighting it off kind of thing. One of these times they're not going to be able to fight it off. I think the biggest thing probably over there is Solanke and how he's played and how many points. I mean, they were able to score goals. I think when you're at the bottom of the league, like when we do the panel show and you talk a lot about like these teams on the bottom of the league, and you talk to like somebody like for Fulham, like he always talks about how it's important what they do against other teams that are in the similar standing, not what they do against City, not what they do against like Liverpool and stuff. And you got to be able to score goals when you're doing that. And I think the team that scores goals obviously is going to be more likely to get. Bournemouth has kind of become my second favorite team. It's hard to have a second favorite, but if you had a second favorite, Mateusz,
yes,
who would it be?
I'm gonna go with Brighton because when Michelle and I went to England back, was it 5 years ago now? We went to Brighton. We went to London and Liverpool, but we also went down to Brighton, and we went to the Amex Stadium. We didn't get to go inside, but we went to it and we got to see it from the outside, went into the shop, kind of just did a fun little walk around it. And for some reason, it just I just remember that as being a really nice day. And they have pretty likable players. And I think the story of Lallana going there and Milner going there probably helps in that sense too. So I think Brighton would be up there for me. If I'm thinking of a second favorite, it would have to be some team not in the Premier League. Like I want to have another team that I'm really rooting for to get promoted into the next division, rather than rooting for a team in the Premier League to get X or Y spot.
Yeah, I would say Brighton just because I like how they play. And that could be the De Zerbi effect. So that could be some of the players they have. You're right, though. The Lallana Milner thing definitely kind of helps because when they're on, you're like, are they there? Kind of a thing. You're like watching for them. Ryan says, to be fair, I have like 5 second favorite teams. Yeah, I can't do that because every team usually has somebody that annoys the shit out of me, that and I can't root for them. This is actually, like this is why it was very difficult to find names. We're lucky to have girls because I thought it was a lot easier to find girls' names. Because if you had, if you had a son, we had like the biggest battles of what the name would be, and we never agreed on one. So we've been lucky enough not to have like a boy because I could not. Because any name you threw out there, I was like, no, because I know a guy with that name on this team that I hate, or I know a guy from high school with that name I hate, and I can't. Every time my name comes up, that's all I'm going to think of. It's just Lallana is leaving Brighton, but Milner got an extension. Where is Lallana going, or is he just like a free agent?
He's free agent. I think. Oh, what did I just saw?
What was there? I'd be like, is he
Shoot.
coming back?
Keep going with the comments. I just saw something about Lallana recently. I'm gonna look for it.
Sounds like Milner seems like Bournemouth's family's ancestors. Really, I did not know that. I didn't know Brian have connections over there. Sergi says second team is that's as bad as the half and half scars. Yeah, that's why I find it like very hard to say second team is probably Leicester says Chris. Southampton. So it's going to be one of the guys coming. Well, he was in Southampton, correct? So it makes a bit more sense. Didn't we get him from Southampton?
Yeah, he would. Yeah, so he would be coming back. Yes.
Well, it would kind of make sense. We always thought, Milner would do that with Leeds if Leeds came back up. So
Hendo would do it with Sunderland.
Yeah,
but I don't.
No, he went for the generational wealth and the heat instead.
And he went, and Southgate promised him that he would still be on the team, and not quite what happened. So, sorry, Hendo.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, like wrong decisions being made. And, I almost feel like, and I loved Hendo, and I thought, it was really disappointing in terms of what he did. Obviously, like, as a player and a player career-wise, aside from, go where he went and what he was trying to do when he was in England and stuff like that. But, I mean, you look back and you're like, holy cow, dude, could you have made a worst decision? Not only like you're saying the Euros and stuff, but like in the long run, like after your playing career, life is going to be a lot more difficult for him as opposed to finishing with like Liverpool or going back to Sunderland, something like that.
Right. At least he was able to somewhat salvage it by going to a club like Ajax, where he could still have some sort of an impact. And it is a big club, within the confines of
It was a big
Europe.
club in shambles.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to go through the ruins to make it to the other side.
Says the prince. Nobody's buying that when it comes from a prince, by the way, but go ahead. Go ahead with the next headline.
I don't know how much if you wanted to get into it, but we see
let's
that.
Freaking get into it. Yes, let's get into this.
Enzo Maresca is Chelsea's number one target as new head coach. Chelsea have today asked Leicester for official permission to speak with Maresca, and I was wondering your thoughts there.
I mean, we talked about this with Pochettino, right? I just don't freaking get it. I really don't. I don't know if you got a guy who said what, the owners want to hear. I just don't get it. You had a guy who turned things around and had the right things in the right direction. Is it a bad choice? Not really, being in England and stuff like that. I actually expected a lot worse choice. Maybe that's why. I was expecting more of a retread, to be honest, thinking of Chelsea, and they would bring somebody in who's used to working with high dollar people and egos, kind of a thing. So that's the only thing I'm not sure of, because you're bringing a guy who, if you normally brought this guy in, right, I would say, I think he was in the like City's like U team system or something like that, right? So you would think, he would be a manager who's going to play more young guys and stuff like that. But that's not really the issue you have at Chelsea. It's more about dealing with these high dollar people that you signed and trying to work them in. And maybe if you didn't sign 3 CDMs for like 400 million, you wouldn't have this issue. So I always says there are people who don't even like folks wearing shirts from other clubs and other leagues. Yeah, not a huge fan personally.
No, you don't.
No,
No,
and I'm
I
proud to say I have never worn a jersey that's not Fenerbahce or Liverpool.
never
Let the
really.
record show, never, ever.
Wow.
You'll
Okay.
never catch me.
Oh, I will now. You're probably a little bit slower than you used to be.
I'm a lot slower than I used to be. But yeah, I never, like I say, like Fenerbahce jersey I'll wear with the ties I have, but and Liverpool, I don't think. Okay, which team is? Oh, here we go. Because the way you said really said I really
Well,
have worn quite a few.
I was a child once upon a time, right? I mean, you saw things that
I'll
you liked.
let you get away with a Polish team.
Well, okay, so Polish national team, right?
Okay, that's fine.
I
I
have
think
an
we're not counting that. We're going club shirts. We're
club
not counting
shirts.
national
Okay,
team. I
okay,
assume we're not.
okay. Because I was gonna
Oh
say
wait,
also have
Bayern jersey Lewandowski. Is it?
there's one Bayern Lewandowski, there's a Dortmund Lewandowski, and a Dortmund Royce. Because I really liked Marco Royce as well. Like 10 years ago. So there's those two. There's a couple Chicago Fire jerseys. I know. I'm about to get kicked
I'll
off the
let you
show
get away
forever.
with that one.
Oh, hey.
I'll let you get away with
Um,
that because I don't even consider like a real team. Maybe that's what. So I'll let you get away with that. But so you have a Lewandowski. What was the other one? I'm sorry.
Marco Royce, also Dortmund.
Okay, why?
And I really liked Dortmund in that like 12
Okay,
to 14 phase. As you know, in watching them, and they had a lot of Polish players on there, so it was almost easier for me to connect with Lewandowski and Błaszczykowski and Piszczek, and I was like, man, this is actually a pretty good team, and the part of the spine of this team is Polish. That's pretty cool. And they're in the Champions League. They're in the final. What the fuck is going on? So yeah, and then I also have a Newcastle club or Newcastle kit from like their 07-08 season. It's this maroon and blue and gold trim. It just looked really cool.
so
And
wait,
I
are you
think
buying these because of colors? Then you're confusing the hell out of me.
some of it is
'Cause,
just, yeah,
I
because
mean,
they look
the
cool. Because
Royce
I
thing
think
and
this
stuff, it was
is,
going well, and it just got out of control.
I think also Yahweh's point here is that I think part of it is that I do like to collect different shirts.
He's just opening the door for you. You just like
and
you just ran
I'm
through
just
it.
like a Kool-Aid man, just going right through it because I have the opening. Yeah, so I think that's where most of that comes from, is because I like the collection of it. Like for basketball, for example, I've got like 60 jerseys, and they're all different players and different teams and stuff. So, but I play in them. I wear them. So
Oh, okay.
that's part of it too. I don't just do it just to
Do you
have.
change your style based on the jersey you're wearing that day? Like, I'm Sean Kemp today. Or like,
I can't reach the rim, but god damn it, I'll try. No, but whenever I wear my Luca jersey, I really do try and play like him, which annoys everyone because I just sit at the halfway line. I just start complaining at people. Like, what's going on?
okay, wait. Cersei says, no, man, Cersei, the man of international mystery and inconsistencies. One club, one shirt. That's it. Unless it's on an international shirt. 30 seconds later, I do have a bunch of Ronaldo. Come on, man. Make up your mind. Sean Kemp went to my high school, says Ryan. Really? You know, the only thing I have with Sean Kemp is I had like this little scam way back in the day of rest in peace, Ryan Beam, who I used to work with. He has passed away at a very early age too. Actually, we lost him early, but we used to do a lot of internet scams on like, well, I guess it is scams, but like side hustles back in the day. You know, not all of us are princes, so we had to have some side hustles to like get some money going. And then we would like buy these huge lots. We were into like sports collectibles, and we would buy these huge lots of like figures and stuff like that. And there's always like shit figures in there. And sadly, Sean Kemp was one of like there was a Sean Kemp, Stefan Marbury, and who was Grant Hill were and not necessarily because they're bad players, but it might be like his 10th figure coming out or something. So I remember like we went back in the day and bought this huge lot with Rick, and they were all like only like $1 each or something like that. And normally they were selling for like $14-15 or something like that. But back in the day, and you can thank me for the no receipt return policies that retailers have now, and then you could just take them back to anywhere that sells these figures, and they would just give you in-store credit for them. Well, they give you in-store credit for like the $14. They don't know you bought it online for $1, and then we would buy the high-end ones, like Randy Moss and stuff. This is that old. Randy Moss was a rookie and stuff like that. So my only memory of Sean Kemp is shoving those figures to. And I might have played the parts in the Kmart's demise too, because we would take him back to Kmart.
Does it feel good getting that off your chest?
It does. It does. Not really. I mean, it was a good scam at the time. Playing a 5-a-side tournaments. Wait, we might have a pretty solid American Scouser team, by the way. Really old one, but back in the day, potential-wise, we might have a pretty solid team. There was a point in the mid-90s where Kemp was the most exciting player in the NBA.
Couldn't tell
you. He was pretty darn solid, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, him and Peyton had a great partnership in Seattle. It's just unfortunate that they ran into Michael Jordan. That's true. That's the case for many players in the 90s, unfortunately, except for Olajuwon in those 2 years that the Rockets won. But yeah, it was a tough team to go up against in Chicago. But Seattle did have a lot of they were exciting, and hopefully they get a team back soon, because I think the city really wants one.
Yeah, that's. I always thought that was odd that Seattle does not have one, especially for a team that's pretty big on their sports teams and stuff like that. For them not to have one is weird, but that's American sports and the weirdness for you, where a team just packs it up and goes. Well, I mean, we should probably try to wrap this up. Any plans for today? No grooming, I'm assuming. Everybody's closed, so there's not going to be a lot of grooming going on.
Well, okay, so
here we go. This is
my barber. There is a I think this was like
special
2 years ago. When I made an appointment, he was like, "Oh, I'm introducing online appointments and stuff," and I was like, "Cool. Can I just do reserve appointments every 4 weeks and just have it for the next like 3 years or whatever?" So in my email, I have just 3 years worth of appointments for every 4 weeks, just to have at that time slot. And
what is the time slot like? I mean, like, is it that special?
10:30 on a Monday. It's just nice because I have the day off. I don't have to worry about anything. I just get there, I get it done, and it's all good. Because he tends to fill up pretty quick. So Michelle told me 4 weeks ago, she's like, "Hey, the next one is on Memorial Day, right? I don't know if he's going to be open." And I was like, "Okay, I'll call." So I called, couldn't get in touch with him, but I got in touch with one of the other guys that work there. He's like, "Yeah, I think we're open that day." I was like, "All right, cool." And then it didn't sit well with me, so I waited a couple weeks. I called again, and I was like, "Hey, I just wanted to see if Slim was available." And like, "Oh no, he's on vacation right now." I was like, "Cool. Can I just get confirmation you guys will be open on Monday, Memorial Day, the 27th?" And this other guy that answered the phone, he's like, "Yeah, we'll be open." So after this, I have to call to make sure he's open, because I don't know, and I might have to wait now another 4 weeks to get my next one, because apparently the other barbers in the store have no fucking idea what's going on Memorial Day, because they kept telling me it's open, and apparently if it's not, it's gonna.
What kind of a place is this? Is this like Polish royalty kind of a barber?
No, it's not. No, it's just your classic.
I actually expected you to have the guy come to you, to be honest.
I
think we're all disappointed. I can't speak for the audience, but I think we're all disappointed that you don't have like a whole crew coming over to your house to take care of the prince.
I love how we have this this image of my life. And
hey, we've all seen the gold forks, dude. You can't go back.
And as soon as this gold screen comes down, and if it were to come down in camera, everyone's just like, "Whoa, never mind. That's not what I had in mind." So yeah, let's keep that up, and I'll keep fooling the people that watch. But the real ones know I've got nothing. I'm no prince.
Oh man, I know you tried to downplay it, but hey, we all knew, and then you confirmed it with the gold spoons and forks and stuff in the tapa table. So cat's out of the bag, buddy. But hopefully they're open for your sake, or we'll be looking forward to a scruffy prince for the next 4 weeks, probably. I'm sure he'll squeeze you in somehow, but I'll be back tonight. Speaking of Scruffy, the formerly Scruffy Paul Bickler, now a businessman, and Gally will be on tonight. God knows what we'll talk about, but we'll find something to talk about. We might talk about Sean Kemp, who knows? But we'll be back tonight, so we will see you guys then. 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. Once you're done with barbecuing and stuff like that, sit down and listen to the gang chime in. Thanks as always for contributing this morning. Give us a like, a share, and all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys tonight. Take care.